let's go over some things and, have a conversation. First
Mm.
of all, which I think is more interesting, is how does a brother such as yourself even come into the kind of consciousness that you are walking into? A lot of our young men, even the older men, it's like they're on another page with their life, which primarily seems to have to do with self, which is nothing wrong with being for self as long as, you consider other people. But, what brought that about in your life where, you started thinking about your people as a whole? That's what I
Mhm.
think would be very interesting.
Mm.
Tell us a bit about that.
Yes, yes. Well, it has to be recognized and understood that we're living in a society that never wanted black men, to be fully black men, and everything that it means to be a black man, um, to be strong, to be disciplined, to be um, a force to be relied upon in the community at large, and particularly within the family. So there's a whole host of things that have been done to keep black men from coming up into a fullness of their manhood, and black men, who have beaten the odds and have stood up in our neighborhoods and our community to strive to reclaim their positive presence within the black community and within the black family have always been seen as a enemy, or to be gotten rid of, you know, and so I didn't have a father in the household, like so many other families, and I say that that's a direct consequence of a system that wants to portray black manhood under the guise of, if you're not a protector or you're a provider, then you're not necessary in the family. You're not necessary to your woman and you're not necessary to your children, and this is something that black men have had to live up under, a system that helps to perpetuate, this thing of protector and provider, but does everything it can to stop you from being either one,
That's
you
true.
know?
And I think
So,
we can see a lot of the results,
mhm,
from that. But, I'm wondering, what was it or how did it come about
yes,
you were taken off that path,
yes.
and came into, this consciousness. So,
Hmm.
like, is there any one thing that you could point to that, like, that just changed the course,
Yes.
of your life?
Yes, I would have to say, I'll tell anyone, it's hip hop saved my life, you
Mm,
know, in a conversely, funny way, in the late 80s, early 90s, hip hop had become decidedly, black conscious, black power in its delivery. Um, and, such artists as Rakim Allah and KRS-One and Public Enemy and the Brand Nubians, they helped to bring a missing element, to our development, at least to my generation, particularly those like myself who didn't have a father or even a father figure, So it wasn't the the civic association, it wasn't, the pastors and reverends. It was actually hip hop that introduced me and people of my generation to people that we didn't even know had ever existed. People like Malcolm X, who became my spiritual father, and father figure. Um,
I'm so glad that you said that because hip hop is a very, very powerful tool of
mhm,
our people. You know, when back in the day, as they say, I used to be a rapper myself,
mm,
and my son, may rest in peace. It was my
mhm,
son who was the one who introduced me to Tupac.
mm,
He came home, he's like, Ma, you got to hear this. You got to hear this, you know.
mhm,
And I think it was Dear Mr. President. that song. But I remember the impact that Tupac had on the lives of our youth, period.
Mhm.
Because
Mhm.
it was their voice that they was hearing. It was the side of the coin to life that wasn't being told to them, but that they felt and that they knew, and it was being these rappers, they were articulating it, the things that they go through, how they felt, and it's so important to be heard. I believe it's especially for the youth because you come up in a society that is oppressing you, despises your presence here, and you don't see a lot of positive images towards you, you don't even hear your voice. It's like you
Mhm.
walk alone in your own thoughts and feelings concerning your surroundings. But when you hear hip hop, you hear another brother or a sister, that's speaking the truth that resonates with you, they're speaking about your life and situations. Like if we all could reflect back on that rap, it makes me wonder sometimes how I keep from going under.
Mhm.
Everybody in the hood could relate to that, but
Definitely.
you wouldn't hear that conversation on the news. You wouldn't hear
That's
that conversation in the media. You wouldn't hear that kind of conversation in your school. You heard somebody who looked like you, who came from where you came from, speaking that truth in a way that could be articulated that anybody could understand. So yeah, it had a magnificent pull on our youth. It gave them, it was something that said to larger society, we here, we here,
Mhm.
good or bad, we here. This is our life. And I think it's so important for the youth, for the young people to be represented like that. And when they see it coming from one of them, all the more better. Now, having said that, look at what hip hop or rap has been turned into. It's
Yes.
been turned into a destructive tool, to destroy the minds of our youth and
Mhm.
in a course where they display and advertise ways and means in which that we could kill ourselves, or disrespect ourselves as women.
Mhm.
And I've always wished that, we could take that back, and return it, to its rightful form and return it to its rightful use and intended purpose.
Yes. Yes. And we can.
Mhm.
We definitely can. Like, first and foremost, hip hop made me want to learn about my history. Hip hop introduced me to Malcolm X, who introduced me to a positive self conception, introduced me to a knowing that all that's wrong in Black America, almost everything has come about from the result of us being in a system or under a system, that can be called racism, white supremacy, white skin privilege, which has produced conversely a Black inferiority and a dependent mindset on the part of Black people to where we don't believe that we can do for ourselves anything, to help ourselves, and that we're always dependent upon either white people directly or any other racial ethnic group, after that, for our food, clothing, and shelter.
This dependency, how do you view that dependency? Is it a self-imposed dependency, or is it something that was put upon us, as a result of slavery? Because, during slavery, we didn't have the right to think outside the box or to choose
Mhm.
anything for ourselves. In fact, was killed and murdered, for even thinking it. Okay.
Mhm.
So now here we are generations later, trying to revive the people and get them on the mindset of do for self. And sometimes, those of us who are more enlightened or conscious get frustrated with our people because they don't have that mindset to do for self. They can't see us as doing for self. But I wonder how much of that is really a result of slavery, and the chains that was put upon us so that, whatever mind we came here with was totally obliterated,
No doubt.
new mind being replaced that kept us perpetually dependent on, the master, for our sustenance, for our life, for everything. Okay, now
Mhm.
here in America, it seemed like we function underneath another master in the form of government,
Mhm.
because we are constantly, continually made to beg and plead for services and programs, to help revive our community, to save our community, always on the begging end. And I don't see nothing wrong with getting, services and programs for the betterment of our community, but I see where I see it's wrong as is that when we solely and wholly depend on that and that alone. Other communities have their own resources and their own culture and their own way of producing and owning and possessing wealth, but not us. We are perpetually made to be on the begging end, looking for sustenance for our existence. And I believe that that is one of the residues, that remain with us as a result of slavery. The question is, how do we come up out of that?
Mhm. Well, it most definitely, you know, has its roots in slavery. When you read Booker T. Washington's Up from Slavery, Booker T. Washington was about 5 or 6, maybe 7 years old when the so-called Emancipation Proclamation happened. And he tells the story from a little boy's perspective of how, the man rode up on a horse and declared that slavery is over. And there was a celebration that erupted, amongst the enslaved population who dreamed about, becoming free one day, and now this was the day, and now they were celebrating, we're finally free. And he talked about the celebration went on for maybe about a half an hour, and then he said that all of a sudden there was sort of like a confusion, and then a melancholy setting in, and then shortly after that, he talked about how family after family was making their way back up to the big house, to the master's,
Mhm.
home, to ask him, what was it for them to do now that they're free? We've been enslaved. All we've known is slavery for hundreds of years. And now you tell us we're free. You took a self-agency away from us. You took a self-determination. You took a knowledge of ourselves, a belief in ourselves, and belief in a God that was for us. You took all of that away from us, reduced us to the status of slaves, of peons. And now you tell us we're free. We don't know how to go for ourselves. So they wound up going back up to the slave master to ask to stay on. And then shortly thereafter, they introduced a system of sharecropping and the black codes and segregation and all of these other things that was meant to keep us in a state of being um, slaves. The 13th Amendment, which was supposed to outlaw slavery, but left a loophole that said if you are convicted of a crime, you are free except in the fact where you are convicted of a crime. And if you are convicted of a crime, you can be reduced to a status of legal slavery. So there's been so many things that have been done to stop us from healing and regenerating ourselves. Every black leader, you know, and movement that has erupted in this country organically is seen as a threat, especially, the black man as a leader, is seen as a threat. So what they do is they do everything that they can to either buy off the black leadership, uh, assassinate or imprison or exile, but by any means necessary, we have to keep the black community from developing an organic leadership of its own that will help that community to heal themselves, to heal the relationship between the man and the woman, to as the foundation of the family, which in turn helps you to begin to build a strong neighborhood and community.
Yeah,
So
you said
yeah.
a lot.